This week on Rockstar Superhero. Legend. It's a word that gets played out, overused, and misappropriated all the time. It also completely applies to my guest today, the most amazing chap, Tony Maddocks. Tony once fronted the mid-90s Apex Predators above all, and then the band mysteriously disappeared. When the dust settled 26 years later, I got an email asking if I'd be interested in talking to Tony about a new Above All EP, out now on all major platforms. Of course I said yes, and the rest is history. Our conversation today was light on my end and heavy on stories from Tony himself, and if you're watching this on video, you're pretty much going to see me smile the entire 60 minutes because, well, I'm talking to a legend. This is my chat with a great frontman and the founding father of metallic hardcore, at least the way I know it. This is Tony Maddocks, this is Above All, and this is Rockstar Superhero.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It means a lot, to be honest with you. To be honest with you, the fact that anyone's taking any notice of us after such a long layoff is, it means a lot to us. I mean, I think we didn't really have any expectations. I mean, we wanted to record new music. We knew that. Mm-hmm. We wanted to play that one reunion show and then sort of, see how it would work after that. But yeah, no, it's great. Thanks very much.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny. When you guys came back, it reminded me a lot of Refused from Sweden. Are you familiar with that band?
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so it was like, one, make some big noise, get noticed on various circuits, right? And two, record a debut, and then three, immediately disband and become legends.
Well, obviously that's that, I wouldn't put us at the same level as Refused, but, that's very complimentary. But, it's something that I don't think any of the original members really thought would ever happen. We didn't. I think we just all drifted apart. So when it sort of came about, when I was asked to do a podcast, funny enough, local guy around here, a guy called Andy Baz, we call him. He back in the day, he was like a 14-year-old, and he would turn up to every Above All show everywhere. London. I mean, he was sneaking out. He's from around this area. Great kid at the time. Yeah. Really loved, and I think we were sort of his gateway band to get into sort of this particular sort of music. Anyway, he sort of stayed in the scene. He's had numerous bands. He's got a band called Raiden, a band called Epic of Gilgamesh. He's done lots, Wow. And he's still quite active in the scene. Yeah. And he sort of contacted me out of the blue and said, "Look, I don't know if you're interested, but I'm going to be doing this podcast called the Then and Now podcast. So we're going to be going back, talking to all the old Essex bands." And I was like, "Annie, I'm just so disconnected from, I've always, don't get me wrong, I've always carried on listening to the music, and it's very easy now with, everything's digitally available anyway. Yeah. So even though I'm not going to a lot of shows, I've just been so busy with work and family and those sort of commitments." And I said, "Really? Do you think people are going to want to listen to me going on?" And, and
definitely, brother.
Yeah, he was like, "Tony, you've got to do this. There's so many people, especially I want to get your story back out there." And so that meant me sort of reaching out and reconnecting with the old band members, because I'm going to be honest with you, my memory is terrible. So I wanted to make sure that I was well prepared and I had, good notes and information. So I reached out to Hallam and Ben, the guitarist, because Hallam was the original bassist, but sort of left towards the end era of Above All after our tour with Pitch Shifter. Reached out to the rest of the guys, and everyone was really, welcoming. Great to what it's like when you're reconnecting with everybody. Yeah. And it's also this was all happening during the COVID lockdown as well. Wow. So we had all of this going on. And I think this is another reason we had a lot of time on our hands. I don't know what it was like over there. I mean,
bad.
Yeah, for a good few months, we were pretty much not doing a lot.
Hoarding toilet tissue.
Yeah, and just, trying to keep yourselves occupied and positive. And obviously, I think looking back, this was a really positive time in all of our lives, even though we've all moved on and doing different things. And so that reconnection happened, and I did the podcast. And then Andy was like, "Okay, so I'm thinking of doing a reunion, show." would you be interested? And I said, I'd love to do it, but I don't know about the rest of the guys. So obviously put it out there, and we just started, we started doing the WhatsApp chats on our phones. Everyone was reconnecting, and it was a really strange time because, and I wasn't the only member of the band. It was all of a sudden there was so much stuff I'd forgotten. What happened while we were in the band, the experiences we had, the laughs, and not a lot of bad times, to be honest with you. They're all pretty good. I only look back with fond memories, really. Yeah. And so I went for about 2 or 3 weeks where I just was not sleeping. I just had all these memories were it was like the weirdest, and I'm not just making this up. It's like all my neural pathways seem to have been opened up with all like this repressed memory. So I had all these stories, and and just all this information came flooding back. So then that led us to, unfortunately, I think we went into another lockdown after that. So the show got postponed for another, I think it basically worked out a year. Wow. But in the meantime, we actually reconnected, met up, started practicing, which was really strange. And it just all sort of fell into place after that, really. Wow. And I don't think anyone actually had any sort of ambitions to say, right, we're actually moving forward. We're gonna record some new music. Yeah, but I think we all enjoyed this. We enjoyed each other's company again. We enjoyed playing the old tunes, and we're lucky, really. I mean, stop me if I'm rambling on, but I'm just trying to give you.
It's freaking badass. I love it.
Yeah. So what I would say is, so when the band split up, obviously we all went in different directions. I sort of ended up sort of joining the family business, which is an engineering construction sort of firm. Ben, the guitarist, Ben Doyle, he stayed in the music business. I mean, he still works in it actively now. So he went on to do a couple of other bands. I think he was in 100 Reasons. He was in a band called Hexes as well, which is Daniel P. Carter, who was an ex-member of Above All gets very, it gets all very intertwined. And obviously Dan's gone on to become the Radio 1 rock DJ. He still hosts that. Plus he's had other bands as well, very successful in his own right, great artist. Anyway, so Ben sort of stayed in the music industry, and he's been teching for Two Door Cinema Club and quite a few bands over the years. So he's always had his hand in, So he's sort of always been an active member in the sort of music world. Hallam, the original bassist, he went on to, after he left Above All, he ended up working at the Krang magazine in Good the Lord, photo. Man. Yeah, because we opened up a lot of doors and a lot of connections at the time. Oh yeah. So and that's what we did. We used to go to shows. We used to, in those days we didn't have the internet. We didn't have any of this. So it was all about face-to-face communication. So he stayed. He was, and he's more into media and graphic design now. Obviously, due to as far as media's changed. Yeah. Mark, the drummer, Mark Hartley, he sort of stayed in the area. I didn't really see him too much, but he's got his own really successful carpentry business. So he didn't really pick up any drumsticks at all until our first rehearsal 24 years later. So, so that was a big ask for him. I mean, I did a few bits and bobs like immediately after the band split up. And I never really thought I was going to sort of leave it entirely. I thought I'd probably drift on and do something, find some other bands, which I did. I did a band with a band called Light of the Morning with Rob Coleman, who was in Understand. But these sort of projects, although they were really good and we were into them at the time, they sort of fizzled out as they do. Yeah. And the next thing we've married, kids, and then we've just sort of, life whizzed past really. Yeah. So this has been a real sort of a shock to the system, but a welcome, I'm really grateful and thankful that the rest of the guys wanted to do it. And Ben lives down in the geography of England. Ben lives down in Cornwall, which is the southwest coast. So it's a good 5 or 6 hours away. Yeah. Where he's been involved in the music industry, he's got Logic. He's got his own little studio. So that's how we've made it work with modern technology. Yeah. That's how the new materials sort of come about. And when we knew that we'd have to add a second guitarist, and we've had, I'm trying to think, it was we had another Dan actually from London at the time. At the time we split up, but I think he'd sort of moved on, and he was doing a few other things. So when we were talking about reuniting for the show, Ben had an idea. There's a guy called Jay Rowe who was a guitarist in Hector's, and I think he was in Under Reasons at some point as well. And funnily enough, he's a music teacher, and he lives about 20 minutes away from this area, so he was the perfect fit. And he wasn't doing anything. Again, life had moved on, and he was up for it. So that's sort of how it all taken shape. Not planned, but it's just sort of happened.
Yeah. Wow, man. There's so much to unpack there, Tony.
Yeah.
We could talk this entire time on what you just said. That's incredible. I love the history that you've provided in that snippet there, and that's significant. So I guess we probably don't need to touch on it, but it amazes me how many sort of legendary sort of experiences have happened, right? It just goes to remind us how old we've become.
Yeah,
because, right? Because
exactly
we were fully formed adults back then, and here we are now talking, and we have so much to look back on. We have wives and children and careers, and in fact, maybe second or third careers.
Yep.
But the one thing I do want to ask, because I recognize this experience myself, is the feeling of being in a band. I say this often. It's like being married, right? And or being in a family, whatever you want to call it.
100%. Yeah.
Being in the military, maybe even, right?
Yep.
And there's this brotherhood and camaraderie that cannot be explained. I mean, I understand because I've been in that space, but nobody really knows why it's so easy to connect, because it's deeper than just going back to the super hot girlfriend from the 90s, right? It's something that you share that is on the surface, right? It's all the things we hear, it's all the sounds, it's all of the visuals, it's all of that excitement and that flesh.
Yeah.
But what it really is, Tony, is that deep, this sounds so cheesy, but it's that deep connection to the soul that nobody gets except those guys and your fans.
No, exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head there. And I think, I sort of ended up, the only reason I grabbed the microphone really was because I was too lazy to learn an instrument, but I was in a group of friends where everyone, basically it came about from hanging around with Dominic Anderson, John Hannon, Rob Coleman in the band Understand, Stuart Cornell, because we were a tight-knit group at school. And it just, I was turning up, going to rehearsals, band practices, really into it, sort of going to, when they first started playing their first shows. And it's just one of those things you just, side projects appear.
Yeah.
And I think it's once you create once you form a band, and especially if you think, well, actually, we're going to take this reasonably seriously. I don't mean originally, back in those days, it was just, there wasn't any major formal plans at the very, very beginning. Above all, maybe, but like some of the earlier bands, like Standoff and things like that, it was about having fun, being with your friends, growing up. It was a great time in our lives, and that's why it's great to reminisce as well. But I think it's being in a rehearsal room, being creative, and actually creating something with your best friends there. And it wasn't always easy. There was, there's plenty of times where we'd spend hours and hours and hours in a rehearsal room. Things didn't really work out, but you always got an end product. And I think for us as well, back in those days, we created a scene. It was a small scene in our area, but, we were putting on shows. We were going out flyering. We just created this whole sort of, a whole little scene that sort of has then grown since then as well. We may have left it, but it's definitely, there's still a scene here, and there's still a thriving scene as well. And across the UK as well. I'm not saying we started the scene across the UK.
No, dude, it's everywhere, Tony.
Yeah,
it's everywhere.
100%. And you can't, spending time in each other's pockets, traveling around the country, going to Europe. You can't. That you're going to form a bond with those guys. And even though I hadn't spoke to most of the guys in Above All for a very, very long time, within 10 minutes of our first sort of reunion back at the practice room, it was like old times. Same jokes, same immaturity, even though it's 25 years on. And it's hard to explain to people unless you've been there and done that,
Yeah. I'll tell you, man, I'm so excited that you're here today. I really can't stand how excited I am.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, and you're such a nice guy. Of course, those things come with age, right? We kind of get over ourselves.
Yep.
But it's funny. I have a much younger friend, Thomas Erack from Fall of Troy, and I think about his music and I think about yours, and I think you guys practically invented melodic hardcore. I mean, sure, there might have been a few things around, but it was relatively rare. I mean, nobody screamed back then, man. It was all power pop, right? Which evolved into sort of the more of the new metal things that happened in the late 90s, but nobody was doing what you guys were doing. I mean, maybe in your local scene, but not worldwide. And so you look at the repercussions of that, or the reverberations, maybe is a better way to put it. And you can see the DNA of Above All in all of it. So, I mean, you're a freaking founding father, whether you like it or not, man.
Yeah, well, that's very kind of you to say. I mean, we would probably say no, because
well,
I mean, but we were heavily influenced by, at the time, when we first got into sort of like hardcore back in the day, there were UK bands, but I think we were heavily influenced by a lot of the US, especially Above All. The New York hardcore city bands, but we wanted to embrace more of the metallic sound that was coming through at the time. Right. So your bands like Earth Crisis, Resurrection were a band that were overlooked, who were a band from New Jersey, which sort of, I know Rob Fish went on to do 108. Victor Cara, who was one of the original members of Inside Out, which was Zach De La Rocca's first band. Right. So that metallic edge had started becoming more prominent in the hardcore scene, in the UK as well. But I mean, you had the earlier bands in England like Napalm Death.
But they didn't do it like you guys did.
No, but they were coming. We had that. They were obviously coming from the grindcore scene more.
Sure.
Where we were embracing a lot of those bands were sort of, Earth Crisis, Integrity, all those sort of bands that I was really into, and I know Ben and Hallam as well. I mean, to be honest with you, we were metal kids who got into the hardcore punk scene. We weren't sort of punks getting into sort of the hardcore scene. We were coming from that harder metallic edge, Cro-Mags.
There it is.
Judge.
Cro-Mags.
Yeah. Judge, Cro-Mags. Like I say, you've got the New York influence. But at the time, I mean, I was heavily into the US straight edge scene, massively. Really, quite a few of us were weirdly in this small corner of the southeast Essex part of the country in the UK. I mean, there were other parts around the UK where there was massive thriving straight edge scenes, Bradford, Leeds, up north of the country, and in London as well. But obviously, and then I spent time over in the US. I was in Pittsburgh, so I was lucky enough to go and see quite a lot of the. I wasn't their first show. I went to the first Dayton Hardcore Festival. We had Earth Crisis, who were just sort of appearing on the scene. I mean, I pretty much saw everyone. While Snapcase were just becoming a band at that point. But you had your Sick of It All. You had Madball. They were just breaking at the time, and you had that whole sound that was just sort of becoming that. That sort of hard edged. And that suited us down perfectly to the ground. So
yeah.
I think we were probably a little bit more discordant, coming from a bit more of the screamy, resurrection-y. I wouldn't say dead guy, not dead guy, but we were a little bit more discordant in our, in the origins. But then we soon.
You were aggressive, very aggressive.
Yeah, very aggressive, and I think we were embracing the whole metal thing as well. And we just saw some lanes open up. You had a lot of sort of the metallic hardcore bands starting to tour with more of the thrash crossover bands as well. I mean, we all love Sepultura, and then a big album for us at the time. I remember coming back from. We used to drive up to the Roadrunner office in London.
Because you were on Roadrunner, right?
Yeah. That was that album was on Roadrunner, but we released a first 7-inch on Shorehand Records with one of our friends, Nick Royals, who was, one of the original sort of. I would say, I'm definitely not going to call him a scenester, but he was just like a straight edge. He was like my straight edge guru at the time. He used to do a little fanzine called How We Rock, put on shows at the 1 in 12 club in Bradford. So. I lost my train of thought now. But yeah, sorry. We we used to go up to the Roadrunner office just to show our face, and we were sort of. I mean, when we first started talking Roadrunner, we didn't even have a manager anyway. So this was all sort of how it even happened is pretty crazy, really. But I remember we were given the Machine Head first album, Davidian. Burn My Eyes. Sorry, the album, and we were playing it in the car on the way back from London. I think we all just sat there going, production level, sound, everything about it. We were like, and it just blew us away. Yeah. So those sort of bands, even though we were in the hardcore scene, they really, inspired us to sort of maybe push the boundaries slightly, in our scene and our sound,
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to sit here and do comparisons all day. And of course, you've given me a list of all the things I don't know, right? Yeah. I mean, I can see the fans right now writing down. They've got a list of about 85 bands that they get to look up now. But, when I discovered you guys, I mean, I was listening to some of the really crazy dark stuff from Europe, like Sodom, as an example.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then the New York hardcore scene, like, bands like Death, and I'd never really heard those elements combined before. Not in a way, at least, that spoke to me. I mean, going back to Sodom was a very, very difficult band to like because you couldn't tell if they were serious, and it was kind of disgusting and so kind of hyper aggressive that it was humorous, and it was just really hard to take seriously.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's been plenty of bands. I mean, I don't think I really listened to Sodom, but there's been plenty of bands for you've had the black metal scene,
right?
You've had the death metal scene,
Venom, all that crap.
Yeah, I mean,
or what it is. I mean,
there were some guys taking it serious.
Yeah,
obviously there were, because
Jesus, they're killing each other over it.
Yeah. So and I think I think also a lot of these things are reflective of environment where these people are growing up. I mean, New York, for an example, that was definitely at that time a hard place to You've only got to go and into the history of the Cro-Mags and CBGBs and, the scene, how it sort of, grew up there. Yeah. It went through its violent stages as well. I think these pockets of new sounds have always sort of sprung up across the world, really.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I think we collectively, once I think we decided, when I came back from college in America, we collectively said, right, we had a little bit of interest from Roadrunner on the standoff 7-inch that we did, which actually I hadn't mentioned. So that was sort of a little side project that I was singing with band members from Understand, who then went on to get signed to East West Records.
Right.
Now, obviously, once they got signed to do that, no one really had time to do the standoff project. I had been sort of pre-internet writing to a guy over in Europe, Peter Huren, who ran a label called Crucial Response Records. And basically that was quite a big label in Europe for putting out 7 inches, 12 inches, decent bands as well, all from the European hardcore scene. And he was really into the standoff demo, and he put the 7-inch out. That opened up a few doors at the Roadrunner London office. There was a A&R guy there called Miles Leonard, who was trying to sign Understand at the time. He lost out to the big major labels, and he heard the standoff 7-inch, and he was sort of like, "Oh, okay, what is this?" And that's how it sort of really come about.
Wow.
I was at college in America, and Hallam said, weirdly, we've had some interest from Miles at Roadrunner. Pretty amazing. I mean, never even thought that would even be an option. Explained to him that Standoff really wasn't going to be a band, like a full-time project. But Tony's coming back from college. We're thinking of putting a new project together. And that's literally how it came about. And
Wow.
We came back, recorded a demo, but back in those days at the time, like as I explained, there was scenes, but there wasn't. This was pre-internet. I mean, there's so much content. There's so many bands out there these days.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Yeah, there was bands out there at the time, but I don't think anyone was sort of as. It wasn't like we were arrogant because we didn't think we were any better than anyone else. I think we just we just seemed to think, we just had that self-confidence where we were like, we're going to push this. We're going to open up as many doors as we can. You know, I was ringing up booking agents myself. We didn't have a manager. Saying, right, who's have you got any opening bands on the Life of Agony tour? Have you got any opening bands on? And we literally were just getting ourselves on shows and tours ourselves. And I don't think it happens these days. I mean, you know,
it doesn't. I mean, everything's different. I mean, I can't imagine actually trying to join a band today or being in your situation. Yeah. The changes. I mean, just the way you record, let alone the marketing and the fact that labels, the power of the industry has changed so significantly, and what they want from you and what they don't care about anymore.
It's a different world completely. Yeah.
I
mean, I would say, I'll go on the record saying, you know, this has all sort of come about unexpectedly. We're not expecting to get signed by any labels whatsoever. You know, we can put the music out ourselves. That's not an issue, which is what we've done with this first 3-song EP, which is really to sort of test the waters. Like, as you mentioned earlier, production is just, you know, the levels are up there now. I mean, these songs had not even been, we haven't played these songs together in a rehearsal room. That is happening actually this month for the first time.
You're talking about the 3 on the EP?
Yeah, the 3 on the EP, yeah.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, because we just haven't had the time with lockdown. As I explained earlier, Ben obviously is still, you know, he's still earning his living for his family as a guitar tech. So now shows are starting to happen. He's had to take as many tours as he can to basically try and recoup his loss of finance over the last 2-3 years with COVID, which is, I get this, you know, we all in the band, we're all busy people. We've all got different parts of our, you know, we're all busy work and family commitments, but it's what we can fit in the meantime. We want to play as many shows as we can in between, in the down times where Ben's not touring, things like that. I think we'd like to go in and record I think we'd like to record a full album, definitely.
Yeah.
And then, you know, play as many shows as we can and maybe get on a couple of like supports here and there, but not expecting anything to fall in our laps, because I know it's not going to happen these days. So,
yeah, man. I mean, Tony, oh my gosh, there's so many questions like pouring through my head. I mean, I wanted to ask you about, you know, why the band just sort of disabled itself, right?
Okay.
Because, you know, I mean, look, let's get to the matter of the fact, right? I mean, bands sit on the cusp all the time, whether it's local success, international success, but something happens and then it all sort of implodes. And I mean, this is almost every band, right? That's why there aren't 10 billion well-known or famous or celebrity or whatever you want to call it bands. There's just so much material, but they get lost in the shuffle. I mean, and even my own band was a casualty back in '99. So, I mean, I understand poor decisions getting in the way.
Yeah.
But do you look back at where you were back then and wish you'd made different decisions, or are you just grateful to be here now?
See, that's a catch-22, really.
I know.
So I think the correct answer for me to say in front of my wife would be
you've already told me what I need to know.
Who's upstairs in bed with COVID.
Oh,
I love dearly.
Sorry, sweetheart.
No, yeah. So I think as a life decision, maybe it was the correct one. But I think maybe if you said to me, "What do you have any regrets in life?" I would definitely now say, looking back, rather than splitting the band up at the time, I think we should have just said, "Look, let's take a couple of months downtime."
Yeah,
because I think we were just a little bit burnt out. We recorded the album, got released by Roadrunner. Didn't get any. We got a little bit of promotion in this country. Didn't get any promotion at all in Europe, really. And I don't really think they were ever going to push the album. So we should have taken a little bit of downtime, maybe recharge the batteries. And because I think in the very initial stages, we were just sort of bouncing off the walls and we had so much confidence.
Yeah.
And I think towards the end, we did a couple of tours that maybe we shouldn't have done retrospectively, that didn't really work out. And the scene as well at the time was still transitioning, especially in this country. You know, the whole sort of metalcore thing hadn't really happened at that point.
Right.
And I'm not saying we were pioneers at all, but what I'm saying is we were sort of caught in the middle a little bit, especially in this country. And I just think if we'd have taken our time, recharged the batteries, because let's be honest, Roadrunner did drop us after the first album.
Yeah.
And I as a businessman myself these days, it was the right decision for them. I mean, and they've dropped plenty of other big bands in you just got to go through their roster, and they changed the direction how the label wanted to go 100%.
Yeah. And they succeeded.
And look what, I think even some of the bigger, I was listening to a podcast the other day with Carl from Earth Crisis. At the time, they had Earth Crisis, Madball, and then I think they let a lot of those sort of bands go because they wanted to sign Nickelback. So you can see why they did it.
By the way, after we're done talking, remind me to tell you that story because I know a secret that you don't.
Okay, yeah, all right. You can tell me off air.
Yeah, definitely not happening on air.
I think it gets when I sort of I've talked about this on the few interviews I've done and different podcasts. For me, in a personal, when I reflect on it personally. My regrets. I wish we'd sort of kept together and ridden it out a little bit more. But I get at the time, we were all, we was all within the same rough age bracket. Some are older and younger, and I think we were just a bit fed up with not having any money in our pockets. And I was really not happy with the sound of the album, and especially my vocal performance on the album. For various reasons. Sort of a little bit of a rabbit caught in the headlights. I think in a bigger studio at the time, I had a terrible cold. My throat had gone, and we were under a lot of pressure to sort of perform in quite a short amount of time when we were recording the album. Yeah. And and like Ben, the guitarist, has said, we weren't ready. We weren't ready for that album. And I know that album, don't get me wrong, has fans, but I think some of the stuff, we went on to record a demo afterwards. And I just think at the time we just sort of, Hallam we did a European tour. Hallam had got back from that and was struggling with the touring, and he was like, look, lads, usual sort of story. No one was communicating properly. We didn't go about it the right way. And sort of, we ended up asking Hallam to leave. Dan Carter came in and we did, don't get me wrong, we did some really good shows after that because when the album came out, we went over to Europe and we did a tour with Pitch Shifter. And great guys, got a lot of time for them, but probably it definitely wasn't the correct tour for us to do.
Yeah.
It was an okay tour for them, but there really wasn't a lot of crossover between our sound and them at the time.
No.
We come back and I think we were back about 2 or 3 days. And I'd gone up to Fear Factory, were playing, I think they on a support. No, I think they were. I'm not sure if they were supporting someone at Brixton Academy, and I bumped into Dino because obviously we had sort of the Roadrunner connections, and so we're sort of standing there talking, and he said, "What are you up to?" And I said, "Oh, we just got back from Europe with Pitch Shifter, sort of having that conversation." He said, "Well, what are you doing? What are you doing in the next 3 days?" I was like, "Well, nothing." He said, "Well, one of the bands on this tour has dropped out." He said, "Do you want to play the remaining 3 shows?" So I was like, hand was bitten off straight away.
Yeah.
And and I think we played 2 or 3 shows with Fear Factory, and they were the best shows. Considering we'd sort of come back on a bit of a downer from the Pitch Shifter tour, and those shows were amazing with Fear Factory, and it was just wow. Imagine if we'd actually gone to Europe and did the full tour with Fear Factory. It would. I think it would. Maybe the band probably would have split up at some point, but maybe not at that point because I think we would have had a bit more traction. Our enthusiasm would have been probably through the roof, and I think we went down very well with that crowd.
Yeah.
So it was frustrating in that respect, but I think we all made a conscious decision. And one of my main things at the time was I was just fed up with not having any money in my pocket, and that was what it's like. It's tough, Yeah. But maybe we should have just taken a bit more downtime. But listen, we all went on to do other things and been very successful in different areas in our life. And we're very fortunate that we can come back and do this.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
I don't take anything for granted. And, you know, very grateful that this is sort of happening again, you know, because time's whizzed past. So
It has. It's been a crazy experience just in the last 2 years, because it doesn't even feel like 2 years, right? It feels like maybe 9-10 months.
Yes.
And it goes to show you that as you get older, you know, everything ramps up, everything speeds up.
Yeah.
You know, hearing that story, especially about Fear Factory, just reminds me so much about the music business and how much artists and creatives, particularly creatives like yourself, it's so important to get that audience response, right? Because you're always under pressure. The music business is primarily business. Music is the sidecar of the motorcycle of business, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And when you're a performer, especially in the beginning, you don't realize how much that is true. You just know that the producers and the labels and everybody is pushing their thumb into your eye, trying to get product from you now. And you feel like you're being shortcut at every turn. And like you mentioned, where your vocal performance maybe isn't at the top of its game, or you could have gone back and done one more and really, really hit it out of the park. It's such a painful experience to be a musician. And most people just don't understand that. They think it's all joy. And I remember my ex-wife said to me one time after I came home from rehearsal, she's, you know, I was kind of in a bad mood, so that's a whole nother story. But I came home, it had been a very long day, and I remember walking into the house and it was kind of messy. And I'm a neat freak, so it kind of bothered me, you know, and it wasn't fair. But I said, well, I can see you've been busy all day, you know what I mean? And she said, well, at least you're out there playing with your friends, and emphasized the word playing. And I immediately fired back. And she, of course, she didn't get it. I said, you don't understand. I have to do it. And even though I said that under, you know, I mean, in a bad situation, arguing with an ex-spouse, the fact is that's a truth. Musicians, creatives, artists, painters, writers, we have to do these things. There's a level of crazy caught inside of us. And so when you have a moment to get on the stage at Brixton, man, and open for another legendary band, it's real easy to see what could have been.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I think, like, going back to your original point, being in a band and, you know, having that bond with each other, going on the stage. I mean, you know, I think our very, very first tour, when we came back, I think I'd been back from America probably about 4 weeks. And within 4 weeks, I think we were playing, we were supporting Life of Agony on their very first UK tour.
Wow.
Look, I mean, I'll be honest with you, Rob, we weren't good, but we had that self-confidence. We were developing, but we didn't care. You know, I remember that tour really vividly, and we didn't go down particularly well. You know, people, you know, we're playing up in Liverpool, and you got all these kids standing at the front of the barrier saying, "Do you know any covers?" You know.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah, who are you? You know. But you learn, you know, and you learn the craft, and you know, because it's different playing a small hardcore show that you're putting on yourselves with your friends, and you might be a touring band coming around the UK that we're going to put on for a show around here. But when you step in onto some of those bigger stages, it's a whole different ball game.
It is.
And we learnt our craft, and we developed in front of an audience. We weren't one of these bands who, you know, we didn't take our time behind the scenes. You know, and to be honest with you, we were probably quite lucky we got away with that.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't get away with it in these days because the level's so high now.
Yeah.
And with the internet video and everything else, I'd see some of the really, really old videos, and I was sort of like, oh boy.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I understand it. That was a time, and that's the you know, we were working, and we did become a very good band. You know, when we came back from that, as much as the Pitch Shifter tour probably wasn't the best thing for us to do, when we came back, we were an absolute well-oiled machine. We were you know, so when we hit the Fear Factory shows, we were just on it, you know.
Right,
we were,
right.
You know, because we did 6 weeks, was it probably 5 weeks in Europe, not very many days off. So you become, you know, it was like military. It was like we were so tight, you know, vocally I'd, you know, really progressed. Everyone's playing and progressed, you know, but we did a lot of our development in front of, you know, in front of people, I think, in those days.
Yeah. But the label didn't take advantage of that development, right? I mean, that's it, at the end of all of that it was just an abrupt thing.
They just looked at the bottom, you know, they looked at the bottom, the numbers, and were like, well, you've had, you know, but, you know, and I've mentioned this, I haven't got, you know, I did go through a stage where I was a little bit bitter, and I let that go a long time ago now.
Good.
But, you know, we were touring, we were turning up, and in a lot of places it happened in Europe, you know, Norway, Germany, you know, various places. There was a few, you know, Roadrunner had offices in nearly every city we were sort of playing in, not everyone. Mm-hmm. And, you know, most of their regional offices didn't even know we were on tour. So you're sort of turning up, and they're sort of like, what are you doing here? We didn't know you were turning up. So obviously there'd been no promo, no press. So we were never given a chance to sell any records, you know. Wow. So it was one of those things. I think the writing was on the wall before the album came out. We were not going to see a second album. So you know, it's the way it is. But I'm still grateful for that opportunity. So
yeah,
you know.
and you've had what? Geez, 26 years. I mean, it's been a long time, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the resentment. The bitterness and resentment is long gone.
Yeah.
But and I think, you know, a lot of bands say this, but the stuff we're writing now and creating is, we're not writing it for anyone else apart from ourselves. Yeah. You know, we're doing this because this is the stuff we want to do. You know, again, our sound's going to change slightly. You know, it is going to, you know, the newer stuff now, we've probably got about 5 or 6 other songs that are, you know, different stages, not full songs, but some are nearer to, you know, finality. But you're going to see the sound progress even more, 100%.
Well, you're doing it for you now.
100%.
Just you.
Yeah, there's no one else that we're doing this for. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think anyone can sit here and say, well, I don't care if I get any likes. I don't care, you know, if I get 1 out of 10 on it. Everyone likes their ego patted a little bit, but you've got to keep, you know, and we're no fools. We understand, like I say, the sounds, production. There's kids out there now who are writing some absolutely, especially in the metal, hardcore, deathcore, metalcore worlds. You know, it has progressed so much. There's so much good stuff out there. You know, the vocalists, the guitar sounds, you know, the beat downs, everything is just it's gone through the roof. Yeah. But we you know, we're going to carry on writing for ourselves, and if people are into it, they're into it, and if people aren't, they aren't. I mean, you know, I'm not going to, you know, we're all pushing up towards 50. I'm not going to be sitting here telling, you know, my son's 19, you know, so he's into a lot of deathcore and sort of metalcore stuff, and you know, you got to remember, you're trying to appeal to such a wide, varied age group now. It's you know, I think you got to stick to what you want to write for yourselves, you know? Yeah.
Well, I mean, so you're here, so we want to touch on this because I know we always have limited time, that you and I can't talk for 25 hours, even though we might afterwards.
We probably could.
Yeah. But you know, you got the new 3-song EP. You mentioned it earlier, Disarm the Gods.
Yes.
And man, I am telling you, so I don't want to exaggerate right now, but it's one of those, you know, hair stand up sort of things. When you hear it, especially with today's tones, the modernization of Above All, the new version 2.0 is just monstrous. And I'm so happy for you. And talking to you today, it's like, I know it's 100% authentic, right? Because a guy like you is never going to fake it. Your band, you guys are never going to pretend. And I'm curious, what story is this new record trying to tell us about the band's journey? Or, you know, what has, and I don't know, what's it about? What has the public response been like?
Well, okay. The public response, from what I've seen so far, has been very, very positive.
Good.
I'm not sure. I think people. There's still quite a few people out there who're not even aware that this has happened or happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people have been quite shocked. And I think the general feedback I've had has been, like I say, been positive. But also, it's kind of like you can see it's a progression from where we were.
Mm-hmm.
Back in all those days, 20, 25, 26 years ago. And it's definitely a maturity there that's sort of come about, even though we haven't been writing material between us. I mean, like Ben's one of the main, Ben has always been sort of the riff beast, who's come up with the riffs. And Jay is slightly different to Ben. Now they work really well together. And I think we just wanted to, especially Ben, he's definitely, and I think we all are probably more into the metallic, definitely more into the metallic sound these days. But I think we also wanted to make use of production. We recorded, most of the music was recorded in their own personal studios, but Charlie from Monolith Studios, who was brilliant, he's sort of a younger, modern, sort of come through the metallic hardcore scene, been in lots of bands himself, so he knew how we wanted to sound as well. And we've I think we just, just took what we had back in the day, and we've sort of developed that, a natural progression. Like I say, feedback's been great. I try not to get fixated on, like I say, it's always nice to read some nice stuff, but you're always going to get some people who are like, meh. But to be honest with you, I haven't really seen any negative,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you shouldn't. If anybody's paying attention, the thing that I love about it is it's above all. It's very clearly, I mean, to me, and again, so I'm a perfect example of a fan of yours. And I guess what I'm trying to say is above all is distilled to sound exactly like above all. And so many people get it wrong, right? If you're not really listening to, say, this genre, this subgenre, this style of music, you're going to lump everything kind of together and say, oh, there's just a lot of dissonance and a lot of screaming, and I don't understand what they're saying. And, maybe there's a riff here and there that works. And what I love about you guys is you hit it completely on the head. It is exactly above all for today. It's just
100%.
It's just the 2022 version. It's all the guys. It's the same general thing, but the tones, like I said before, are modernized. And I love that. And I love how you've evolved into the perfect sort of version of yourselves.
Well, thanks for saying that. But I think Ryan on the Meat, I don't know if you've seen the Meat podcast that Ryan does, where he goes through all the Roadrunner releases. Mm-hmm. He's always been a very big supporter of the band, and I think he messaged myself or Hallam and just said it's like all the stuff that you didn't need back in the day, that's taken out. You've got all the good stuff, and then you've built on that, and that's I think going back to the original album, Domain is an album of riffs. I wouldn't say this, there's some tunes on there. Don't get me wrong, and they really work well live. Some of those bits, but I think as songs go, we weren't particularly good at writing songs. We were great at coming up with riffs. I think this 3-song EP, there's 3 songs there. I think our songwriting, and that's like, Ben, all of us individually, we definitely, everyone's definitely progressed. And that's why I'm excited really to get knuckled down when Ben gets back from touring to getting some more tunes together. I mean, we haven't really sort of had the discussion about it, but I think, the general consensus was it was a shame we only had 3 songs this first release. So maybe we'll, all right, I know we're getting older quick, but there's no major rush. Let's get an album together, Yeah. I mean, we could carry on putting out singles or EPs. Maybe we'll have to do that just because of work commitments. I don't know. But we'll just have to see how basically it unfolds for us, really.
Yeah. I'll tell you, man, I mean, you were made for this moment. That's what I find so interesting. The 96 version of you guys was great. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But the 2022 version of you guys is, again, distilled and refined. It's where I kind of wish you always had been, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And look, I get it. The whole, well, what if we were back then? It doesn't matter. You're 26 years removed. But I just love that you're still in the game, or maybe that you came back to the game with the same passion and bravado and the refinement, and it just makes an old man like me very happy. So
that's what we're all about. We're all about making old men happy.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
we're all in the same club. I mean, I wasn't 100% sure we were going to be able to do that. You know, I think once we got off the stage from that first reunion show, you know, obviously we were nervous, but once we got, it went really well. And straight off the bat, I was like, we need to be doing this again. You know, and you know, I've had to turn down quite a few shows already, just while we've got work going on at the moment. But hopefully, towards the end of the summer, we're going to have some gaps open up, and that's what we really want to be doing. And I'll be happy to play in front of 10 people at the smallest show around this area, or I'll be happy to jump on a festival, whatever is meant to be is meant to be.
Yeah.
But we're just going to enjoy the process and the creative process, and we can look back and say we're happy about it.
Invite me over to the UK. I will intro you guys. I will travel the festival circuit with you and walk out on stage and remind the audience that you're about to witness something legendary that you didn't know. Because what I love about you guys, and it's funny because I was checking this out yesterday, I realized, here's this band that a guy my age totally knows about. And I go to your Facebook page, and there's like 55, right? Because nobody knows.
No, I'll be honest with you. The social media, the Instagram page.
Yeah.
I sort of pushed that more. Facebook, I haven't really. To be honest, I don't really use Facebook that much.
No, I get it.
Yeah. So
but you know what I mean? It's crazy. And people say like, "Oh, who are these guys?" They're nobodies. I'm like, "Are you shitting me? This is amazing."
Yeah, I think. What I need to do is employ someone to sort that Facebook page out, because I get a bit lost in the face. It gets quite complicated. Insta, I'm pretty.
You just show how old you are when you said it.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm still 25 at heart.
Well, okay. So before I let you go, what's next for you and the boys?
Right. So we are going to be getting together and practicing. So just a quick recap. Mark, the original drummer, has had to move. He's basically moved away from the area, so he couldn't really commit to where we wanted to carry on, which is totally amicable. Managed to get Will Romaine, who I think you might have.
I definitely know who Will is.
Yeah, so Will is obviously in Hellblind. He was in Romeo Must Die.
Yeah.
I was putting the feelers out to see if there's anyone local who'd be up for it. I was speaking to Adam Frakes from Hellblind, and he said,
I love Adam so much.
He said, look, you're not going to be treading on anyone's toes. Hellblind is kind of a similar sort of project to you. It's going to be sort of part-time. It's professional part-time. So there's going to be lots of times where, if Will wants to do it. So I contacted Will, and he's really into doing it. So very excited to get together with Will and the rest of the band 15th of May to run through all the new stuff. As soon as Ben gets back from tour, which I think is probably the end of, he's touring with the UK band called Foals, who are like a big indie, so he's pretty much booked up to the end of June, I think.
Yeah.
And hopefully he's got some breaks in his schedule so we can get together, really rehearse properly, and I can book in some shows. And then we'll just see what happens from there. I'd like to say to you, yes, we're going to have another EP or an album, but we're just going to, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But there'll definitely be more material coming out. So we've pretty much got 5 or 6 songs that are, and they are absolutely face melters. But, it's like the EP, but it's another step on. Yeah. So we're going to put all those sort of new avenues we opened up and boundaries, we're going to push even further. So, it's exciting. It's just finding the time to get together and do it, really.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, Tony, I got to say this, man, when I do interviews, I mean, no matter how much I love somebody, I always edit them, right? I have no choice. It's my job.
Yeah. Well,
but I'm not editing this one today, my friend. And the reason I'm not is because not only are your stories fantastic and, they're just fun and thrilling to listen to, but it just proves your time in the service of this music and the care that you have for your fans and the appreciation you have for being back.
Yes.
And your relentless pursuit proves you're a legend, man. So I just have to say it's been an absolute joy and honor to host you today. And I'm thrilled beyond belief. And I hope to God I get to go see one of your festival shows.
Well, if it all happens and, if stars align and we manage to get a record out and we can fit it up with work and family, we'll definitely, we'll be playing as much as possible. So you need to, and you can come on and you can introduce us 100%.
Wow.
You never know. You never know what's around the corner, do you? We really never thought the band would get back together. So you don't know what's going to happen.